Good evening and welcome to a very special episode of Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. It's been a huge day today with the Union Budget presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. What's in the budget which is in store for you? What is the story as far as the larger economy is concerned? We've spoken to top industrialists across the country. We've spoken to leaders, opposition leaders as well. Over the next 1 hour, we'll bring you their views, their perspective on what this budget is all about. But before we do that, let's bring you an idea of the key points that are included in this budget right up off the top. There is a big focus on jobs. 3 new schemes for job generation have been included. This part of this will be an internship to students in the top 500 companies in the country, with the government to pay the first month's salary of first-time employees. As far as taxes are concerned, and yes, all of us would certainly be wanting to know what's the detail there, the standard deduction in income tax in the new regime of taxation has been raised to 75,000 rupees from 50,000 rupees. So again, a push to people to move towards that new regime if you want to save some money. The new tax regime slabs have therefore been changed. Salaried class could save up to 17,500 rupees. There is no change for those who are part of the old tax regime. There is a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act 1961, which the government is now looking at. They propose to make the changes in a period of 6 months flat. Long-term and short-term capital gains tax and STT will be hiked significantly, and this has been welcomed by industry. Angel tax has been abolished. A customs duty for mobiles, gold and cancer medicines has been slashed. The fiscal deficit has been cut to 4.9% from 5.1%. Better fiscal discipline. Will this result in an improvement in India's credit rating? This is a very positive aspect of the economy. And in addition to this, there are special finance schemes for Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. These were all demands which were made by alliance members of the BJP in the NDA, and there is an easy access credit scheme for medium and small scale enterprises. So those were some of the key points that emerged in the union budget. Let's bring you reactions and a lot more which we've had throughout the day. We've got a wonderful panel with us. Chandrajit Banerjee, Sanjeev Puri, with us are Mukundan and Kunal Bain. Thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Puri, let me come to you first. A big bang budget is not always something that's required. In terms of this budget, I characterized it as being incremental. Is that something you believe it is, or do you believe it's better than that, more than that?
So I think it's a very good budget, because there are policy interventions that have happened in the past that have worked well, and it is evident from the economic performance. 8% when the whole world is under distress is a remarkable achievement, and I think carrying forward that model now is a good positive. It kind of reinforces continuity of that strategy and approach. So I think that's very important. It's a very important signal. Second is it brings in many new dimensions. I think very clearly a lot of focus on employment and employability. A lot of very sharp focus on rural and agriculture. A lot of focus on making manufacturing future ready with the areas like innovation, critical minerals, and very clearly a lot of focus on competitiveness. A lot of focus on ease of doing business. The income tax regulation revision in 6 months. And also the factor reforms being, although, we can argue that the reforms are not laid out, but I don't think the budget is where it needs to be laid out. But very strong statement to say that a position paper on that will be prepared. And very clearly also the move to connect with the states and incentivize states, because a lot of the next generation reforms involve largely at the state level.
Right.
I think these are all very, very powerful statements, statements of intent. And of course, it does require all stakeholders to work together and take it forward. So I would say this budget is significant in many ways.
Kunal, 1.4 lakh crores is the provision made for education, employment and skilling. There are some interesting ideas which have been brought forth. Young people working as interns for a period of 1 year. It's something the government is going to fund as well. Do you, do you endorse this? Do you believe it has some benefits?
Obviously, this budget recognizes the fact that our country has the median age of 28.
Yeah.
And we have 1 billion people below the age of 35. And it is imperative that we upskill them. We keep talking about the age of AI and how that's going to, take jobs away. Actually, it's not going to take jobs away. It's going to change the jobs. But to change the jobs, we have to make sure we change the
skilling, right?
The skills and all the investments and the direction that the Honorable Finance Minister has pointed to today, and all the investments that will be made in that direction henceforth should help with that upskilling. Even from a startup ecosystem lens, it helps because startup ecosystem doesn't operate in a silo anymore. It is deeply embedded and inside every industry, whether it's manufacturing or obviously technology, logistics, etc. So the more upskilled people we have in our country, the more they will be subsumed into the startup ecosystem, subsumed into the existing companies that exist, and be able to be more productive as well at their jobs.
Yeah. But so you would welcome young people being part of, let's say, Snapdeal. Would you welcome them? I know it doesn't imply
the average age at all.
Yeah. What is the average age in Snapdeal?
Yeah. I mean, it's 25, 26.
Wow.
So
I would fit right in, but go right in. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the average age of startups, founders, and the employees who are working in these startups is only going down.
Right.
Now you have college kids who are starting startups, who are getting funded while they're in college, running their companies out of their dormitories. So their ability to hire talent will improve materially if the pool of talent that is available is far more skilled.
Yeah.
And hence it's definitely all these steps and investments are in the right direction.
Mr. Banerjee, fiscal deficit at under 5%, 4.9%. It could in fact be better than that ultimately going forward. What does that mean potentially mean for our credit rating?
So, number one, of course, very strong. The entire macroeconomic fundamentals, as you see, is, as was mentioned in the budget, we see it's very healthy, very strong. And that itself means a lot of space, number one, for, of course, credit rating of India being on a strong footing. But also, if we really look at it, gives space for, the type of capex-led growth that we have seen over the last few years, the continuance of capex, and especially quality capex, the type of capex we require now, the rural infrastructure, really going into the states, the last mile, those are very, very critical spend. Second, again, we would, going forward, should be seeing a stronger focus towards education, healthcare. These are areas when we talk about a developed country, so those are areas where one needs to go in. And the third, I think we see also from that, from the figures that come out, it really also shows us being able to push the reforms forward. And the second generation reforms that needs to be done, which they have talked in a very, very, I should say, intelligent manner to say that
new generations
that, including the states, because a lot of stuff needs to be done at the state level. So to take those chances to go ahead with those reforms, that gives a good space indeed.
Mr. Mukundan, 6 months is all the time that she has given her officers to completely revamp India's tax regime. It's an interesting announcement, very, very unexpected. They always sort of tweak the tax rates and tweak aspects of the tax structure, but to revamp the entire tax structure itself, the tax code as it were, why would the government want to do it, and how do you see that benefiting, the economy?
See, fundamentally, I think when we want to access capital, both Indian private capital as well as international capital, I think one of the key things is going to be stability of tax regime. And what is it going to play out for the next 10, 20 years? I think to think through the space in terms of how the different phase of the economy as it sort of transforms itself, what kind of a tax regime it's going to need, how do we have a simple administration, how do we have a ease of, engaging with the tax policy itself much more positive for the industry. I think somebody needs to think through it. I think that's really what the government is doing. I think rather than tinker at the edge only on the capital gains tax or direct tax, I think she has said that let's go through and understand fully what this tax code is. A lot of issues will also be on the litigation. How do we sort of resolve the litigation? I think let them go through that process. Decriminalization they've spoken about. So these are all things which actually make the, let's say, any average investor come to India and stay in India as an investor in India. I think fundamentally, if you look at the kind of places where there's a rub-off between government and the industry, it is going to be one big area is going to be taxes, other one is regulatory framework. Regulatory framework for each one of them, there's a different finance ministry. For example, MOF is doing ease of, let's say, environment regulations much better. Same way, I think in the area of finance, it's going to be taxation. And I think she's doing a bit in that direction. 6 months is a very ambitious target, as I agree with you. But I think if we work very in a focused manner, I think we can certainly get it done.
Mr. Puri, we keep talking about the importance of the green transition. It's already underway at so many levels. India at so many levels is doing quite well. But did you expect more from the minister, perhaps by way of a green fund or to push along the transition?
I think there are a lot of important facets on the green transition that were announced today. First of all, I think the holistic look at the energy transition, because it was impractical to really grow one way. I think the very important focus on nuclear, for example.
Yes.
And really making it economically viable, because once you make it economically viable, private capital can go after it. I think very, very important focus on even bringing efficiency to our traditional system of energy, because India has got strengths in that area and we're very dependent. There are huge costs of a systems transition. So I think a very holistic look at it. The other aspect of coming to the specific aspect of funding. See, no doubt we require a lot of resources, and resources have to come through public, it has to come through multilateral, it has to come through private capital. So all three have to come in. And I think there is also significant steps taken by announcing the formation of or the intent to make the taxonomy very clear.
Yeah,
that is going to provide both private and public capital or multilateral capital available. And the incentives that are being promoted through carbon markets, for example, the whole idea of minimal viable gap funding, etc. All of this will unlock the potential of the private capital also coming into the system of energy transition. And I just want to touch upon another facets of the climate emergency. I think I was also happy to see that there is also some very specific focus on, while not covered under, not related to energy transition, but related to climate changes, very important look at some of the very important areas of water, waste management, whether it's in rural or in urban areas. So I think some very important issues relating to climate change also addressed.
Sure. Kunal, as our economy evolves, artificial intelligence is going to become even more a way of life. The economic survey has said some scary things. It casts a, quote, huge pall of uncertainty when it comes to jobs, etc., etc. The biggest disruption for the future of work is the accelerated growth in AI. So that's one part of it. And you make the point that people will be reskilled. There are others who say that at lower income levels, people would be out of jobs. I mean, that's an assertion some make. How would you sort of look at that?
I think we can either keep, as you say, I read here, it's the budget of hope. So we can either keep thinking about how things can go wrong or work on how to improve them. And one of the big areas that the government is really focusing on is creating and germinating and promoting new sectors. So like space, for instance, the government has set up 1,000 crore venture fund to create space tech companies.
But you're optimistic about AI. I mean, just to bring you back to that.
Look, I think you can't be indexed only on one direction on anything. You have to look at a balanced view. It could be great for some sectors and it could create some headwinds for others. And I think we have to make a case-by-case assessment of whether AI is good for a certain sector or not good for another sector. That said, India and Indians have demonstrated tremendous ingenuity in the past. This is not the first shift in technology that we've seen. There have been shifts in technology with respect to the internet. There have been shifts in technology with respect to the phones and others prior hand. And every time we've seen that we can endure and we can take advantage of the shift and really put it to good use. That said, like, I think one thing I definitely do want to talk about before it gets lost is the very, very important decision that's been taken about abolishment of the angel tax.
Yes.
Because this is something as CII we've been pushing for many years with the government, and it was creating significant amount of pain for these young founders. Imagine two young founders, 22-year-olds, working out of an apartment in Bangalore, and they get a tax notice saying this much tax is due for reasons they don't even understand.
Yeah.
All that is a thing of the past now. And I think this is a big step that the Honorable Finance Minister has taken, and will hugely benefit in improving the confidence that these young founders have in the ecosystem.
You know, a question to any of you. I found one of the most interesting aspects of the budget, the potential use of space technology to map land and plots. The impact of that would be huge. I mean, litigation at one level might come down dramatically. Property would be legalized in ways that it's not really been. So would any of you like to talk about the significance of that?
We use the space technology very clearly. For example, we produce salt. For manufacture of salt, we actually have the space technology tell us when to pump seawater, when to take out the salt, and it does through space imaging. So I think the application of space technology for land-based use is fundamentally new thinking, and many companies are learning about it. But when you talk about land records and digitization of land records, many states have already started to do it. Gujarat has moved ahead on it. I think it will go through its own pain, because when the first digitization happens, there'll be some objection. Somebody will say this is not right. I think you need to resolve that. But using the space technology to actually identify is a very positive thing. Going to AI, which you mentioned just before, I think we got to look at India as a supply-constrained economy. If you look at healthcare, what is going to really help us reach the healthcare to our billions of people? It's got to be use of digital and AI. If you look at any service which governments wants to roll out, I think we got to fundamentally say these are tools for increasing access, tools for increasing supply to the masses.
Right. Mr. Banerjee, we as an economy are nothing if we don't encourage more participation of women. We keep talking about our demographic dividend, a young India, etc., etc. The active participation of women in the workforce, which is measurable, is essential for us to get anywhere. Did Nirmala Sitharaman do enough to encourage that?
This entire employment-linked incentive scheme that was announced has a part to do a lot on women employment and women participation in the labor force. And it's I guess what this entire area of how we have more women participating in the labor force is just not something which comes as a policy directive from the government. It's a culture and it's a change. And I've seen many manufacturing companies in India have actually in the shop floor being able to employ women, blue-collared even, and the productivity is very high and one of the highest in some of the manufacturing sectors. So it's a matter of how some of the best practices are well captured, the outcomes are well known, socialized, and above all, very importantly, is the hygiene factor in terms of that that how the company turns out in terms of hygiene, in terms of a good balance. It actually means it's a lot of business sense. And lastly, I would think that there are many collaborations required there. So better today, say instance, India is one of the highest in the world in terms of the number of STEM graduates that we produce for women. But we have to see how we increase women opportunities when it translates to job for STEM graduates, women who are STEM graduates. So it's an ecosystem that we can create. Policy directions is one, but I think it's more of a corporate culture and encouragement and projection and socialization of best practices, which makes the change.
Mr. Puri, she didn't speak, the minister, about the defense budget, but Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, did. And it is interesting that they're really trying to push through with Atmanirbharta in the defense sector, earmarking more than 1 lakh crores for domestic capital procurement. It makes a lot of sense because in the long run you have to manufacture your own weapons. But from an industry standpoint and an ecosystem standpoint, it's something which generates tens of thousands of jobs, if not more, in the immediate, sort of in the onset. How is this something which can actually help us from our industry standpoint going forward, particularly also with exports in mind?
See, I think first of all, yes, as you said that it's important for us to have Atmanirbharta as far as this area is concerned. It's a very important sector. And today, because globally you're finding the spends on defense is actually multiplying. So that's an opportunity. India has actually been growing quite well as far as different exports is concerned. So I think it's a terrific opportunity to create jobs. Besides that, I think it will also have a multiplier effect over a period of time when more and more ecosystems develop, more and more technology and know-how comes in, which can also be applied to adjacent industry. So it will certainly benefit the economy in many ways over a period of time. So it's certainly very, very welcome. And it will also build some more strength into manufacturing.
Sure. And that, in fact, was my final question, not so much manufacturing, but MSMEs. And Mr. Mukundan, if you'd like to take that, what did you see in the budget to encourage MSMEs?
I think the budget did focus on the triangulation of three things. One, it focused on skilling and creating skilled labor force. It really did focus on MSME. And third, what it did focus was ease of accessing international market through connectivity, which comes through logistics and focus on logistics. And really, when I add back to a specific sector which you spoke about, which Sanjeev mentioned, defense spending world over is increasing. India is actually very well positioned to be the supplier of components and the finished defense equipment. And this can cut across multiple areas. This is about defensive equipment, also offensive equipment. And really connecting our MSME in small towns like Aurangabad, small towns like Nasik, to international market through big companies, defense companies. And these would be MNCs who want to invest in India. Many of them are coming back here. I think it will be a great opportunity. And I think this will be a growth sector for a long, long time.
As long as India starts investing in defense, which means contracts being signed and industry being fueled. Without that, these are all projections. But I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. It's been a fascinating budget, so many aspects which have been covered, a lot which has been promised, which does need to be realized. I would once again suggest it's an incremental budget. It sort of builds on what we've seen over the last couple of years. Will a lot of this translate into real growth, development and economic sustenance in the future? We'll have to wait and see.